Don't play with it, don't be dishonest. Still not understanding.
Storytime about how my best friend was a snake. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 9th grade. And I've been best friends with this girl who we're going to call Callie since 5th grade. Well, fast forward to 8th grade, there was this guy in my class that I really liked. And obviously I told Callie about it because, like, duh, she is my best friend. And she has never talked to this boy. She never even knew who he was before I had told her about him. And by the way, we're going to call him Jake. Well, eventually him and I started talking and she was hyping us up. Like, she really wanted us to be together so bad. And I was really feeling the love and support. Well, not long after that, I had to move to another town for like 3 months because of my dad. So Jake and I, we stopped talking after me being gone for like 2 weeks. And of course, not long after that, one of my friends from home texted me. And she's like, hey, you know Callie and that guy that you were talking to, right? AKA Jake. Obviously, I say yes. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my best friend was a snake. So like I said, I had to move away for 3 months because of my dad, and Jake and I, we stopped talking about 2 weeks after I had left. And then I get a text from my friend saying, hey, you know Callie and that guy that you were talking to, Jake? Obviously, I say yes. And then she goes, oh, well, they're talking about getting together. And I was livid. I'm like, dude, I've literally been gone for like less than a month and you're already trying to get with the guy that I liked. What the actual you know what? So I bawled my eyes out for like 2 hours straight. And then I decide that I'm going to confront her. And she literally says to me, like, she has the audacity to say that she's been in love with him for so long, even before I had told her about him. Which is a lie, because as I told you guys earlier, she didn't know this man. Well, anyways, Jake ended up friend-zoning her, and she didn't even really apologize to me. She said sorry, but like, she didn't acknowledge the importance of the situation and how it made me feel. She just thought that saying sorry would make it all better. Storytime, my best friend set me up to get jumped. So a little background information, I was 14 at the time and a freshman in high school, and I've been best friends with this girl who we're going to call Lindsay for a little less than a year, which is not a long time, but it felt like we've known each other since birth. The only annoying thing about her was that she desperately wanted to be popular, to the point where she would embarrass herself just to get the popular kids to like her, which obviously never worked. Fast forward to high school, Lindsay meets a group of senior girls, who I guess you would call the hot Cheeto girls, and she immediately starts dressing and acting just like them, and she started acting super weird towards me. Well, eventually Lindsay introduces me to them, and I actually liked them. I thought that they were funny and nice. But the problems began whenever they started paying more attention to me than they were Lindsay. You could tell that she was pissed off with this because she was dressing and acting like them, trying to fit in. Meanwhile, there's me who didn't change anything about myself for them to like me. Fast forward, the one night I'm on the phone with Lindsay and she goes, I don't think I like them anymore. They're super rude. And then she told me that the main girl of the group, Sierra, was talking shit on me and wanted to fight me. Part 2 about how my best friend set me up to get jumped. So like I said, she told me that the main girl of the group, Sierra, wanted to fight me. And then Lindsay says, yeah, we should fight her instead. And I told her I was not going to do that because I am not a fighter. Never have been, never will be. And then she goes, well, you might want to rethink that because she really wants to fight you. Obviously, I wasn't rethinking shit. Instead, I just decided to distance myself from her. And I guess that Sierra had been talking about how I distanced myself and how it was weird. And Lindsay saw this as the perfect opportunity for her to become their new favorite. And she goes, oh, well, I wasn't going to say anything, but I think the reason why she's being distant is because she's talking to your man. Because Sierra's also been complaining about how her boyfriend's been cheating on her again, and she would always go after the girl. Fast forward, I'm in the bathroom the one day and all of them walk in, and then Sierra tells me that she wants to fight. A teacher walked in and literally saved my life because all 4 of them were standing there ready to fight me. So then I text her and ask her why, and she told me about what Lindsay said. Obviously I told her it wasn't true, and the next day she ended up jumping Lindsay because Lindsay was the one talking to her boyfriend. Not only that, but she was literally trying to become Sierra. It was super weird. Anyway, so after this, I stopped being friends with all of them, and whenever Sierra asked me why I stopped being friends with them, even though she thought that everything was squashed, I was like, listen, you're a really cool girl, and I think that you're super funny, and I would love to be friends with you, but honestly, I don't want to be friends with somebody who's literally going to physically harm me over a rumor that they heard instead of just talking to me about it first to make sure it's even true. Surprisingly, she was fine with it. She was like, okay, that's valid. I'm sorry about that. Which I was surprised that she didn't want to fight me because I didn't want to be friends with her. But anyways, now if we see each other, we'll talk to each other, but other than that, I try to keep my distance. Storytime about how I got catfished by my ex-boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 16 years old and I was in 10th grade. And I had been dating this guy who we're going to call Jack since my freshman year in high school. Now the first year of our relationship was absolutely amazing, no complaints. But then fast forward, we get into 10th grade and all of a sudden he changes. Now, Jake had always been a super nice person, but for some reason this year he decided that he wanted to be extra friendly to people, mainly girls. I didn't really think anything of it at the time because he told me he wanted to change up his characteristics, whatever the fuck that means. But the one day I'm in the library and then my friend Chloe walks in and she shows me a video of him rubbing some girl's thigh. And then when I confronted him about it, he was like, babe, she was forcing me to. I promise it'll never happen again. Well, I believed him. But because of this, I started paying way more attention to his actions. I realized he started going out way more and he would always have his location off. And when I confront him about it, he absolutely flips out on me, like for part 2. Part 2 about how I got catfished by my ex-boyfriend. So like I said, after I confront him about this, he decides that he's going to flip out on me, victimize himself, of course. So him and I end up breaking up, and then 5 months later, I meet this really cute guy on Snapchat. And him and I are talking for a while, and of course I start to catch feelings. And then bam, him and I start dating. Now, I'm not even going to beat around the bush with this one. I was willing to date anybody because I was lonely. The next day, whenever I go to school, Jake keeps smiling at me and tries to talk to me, but I'm ignoring him because what the fuck? Well, over the next 2 days, my new boyfriend starts acting like a total jerk. He starts asking me for nudes 24/7. He never wanted to talk to me. Well, the one day him and I were having a really good day and I decided to send them to him. And then a week later, Jack walks up to me and shows me my pictures. And he's like, if you don't do the nasty with me, I'm posting these everywhere. Now, my parents are super strict and I didn't want them seeing it, so I did it with him. And he ended up posting them everywhere and then telling everybody that we did the nasty. Storytime about why my aunt put me back into foster care. Yes, she put me back into foster care. So a little background information, I was 15 years old and a sophomore in high school. But whenever I was 12 years old, I was in a very abusive household. And I had 2 younger sisters. One was 11 and the other one was 9. Fast forward, all of us were put into foster care. I got placed into many shelters/group homes because of my behavioral issues. While I was going through all of this, my sisters were both in study homes, so that kind of sucked. I mean, I was happy for them, but at the same time, I was going through hell. But eventually, my grandma and my dad passed away, so my aunt decided that she wanted my sisters and I. So she got her foster license, and the days leading up to whenever we were supposed to move in with her were absolute garbage. There was this one girl who was 19 years old. Her and I did not get along, and I was supposed to leave that Wednesday, but I didn't want to wait, so I decided that I was going to get myself kicked out in hopes that I would be able to move in with my aunt sooner. Like for part 2. Part 2 about why my aunt put me back into foster care. So like I said, I found a way that I was going to get kicked out, and it was by fighting this girl. And yes, I won. But fast forward, eventually my sisters and I move in with my aunt. And if you guys ever heard the phrase honeymoon, you probably think of a relationship, right? Wrong. I was actually shocked about how fast everything went downhill whenever we got there. Like, eventually my cousins just started being mean to me for no reason, while they favored my sisters. And when I say cousins, you guys are probably thinking they're around my age. No, they were actually in their 20s. Hell, one was even close to 30. Like, these were grown-ass adults beating on a 15-year-old. So eventually my cousins, my aunt, and I are fighting almost every single day. And the one day my sister and I got into an argument that eventually turned into us fighting. And my cousins love to jump in every fight that my sister and I have. Well, they jumped in this fight, and instead of helping break it up, they actually made it worse. The one was holding my leg down, and eventually I got it up and I kicked her in the face. And my aunt thought that it was my fault, so she sent me to foster.